welcome to another episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi. How are y'all doing? I'm, of course, your host, Mark Nez, and I just want to preface all of this with a fair warning that there might be an abrupt cut somewhere in this episode because my father was admitted to the ER on Monday, I believe it was. No, everything's a blur. It's Wednesday now when I'm recording this, Wednesday morning, and he hasn't called me yet, so he might call me sometime during this recording. And if he does, guess what? I'm going to put this on pause and answer his call. Big surprise there. But he seems to be okay. Hopefully can come back home today. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But if he isn't coming home today, then it's for good reason. Just get better. Get better. So that's a thing that may lead to a bit of a odd little cut. And I just want to let y'all know about that ahead of time in case that happens. Also, this has put me into a mind frame, a mind space of complete chaos so that this episode may be a bit manic and all over the place. Not that other episodes, your more regular, whatever you want to call them episodes, are not already a giant mess. But it is what it is. We persevere. What is the line from that movie? What is the one I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Win a Date with Tad Hamilton, where the bartender is telling, I believe, Kim... What's her name? Kim Bosworth? Kate Bosworth? Who was in Superman Returns? And may have been famous for some other stuff, but I just remember from that because that was the one time I thought, hey, you know what? You're not that bad. Win a Day with Tad Hamilton? Good movie. Don't believe me? That's fine. You don't need to watch it. You probably won't like it. If you don't believe me, then you probably already know you don't like it. But what can you expect for me to talk about on this year episode? We've got Lunar Lander Beyond, Ark Survival Ascended, Richman 11, the Kindeman Remedy, Metro Simulated 2. It's Kindeman? Kindeman? Kindeman. I keep wanting to, whenever I see it, say Kinderman, but it's Kindeman? Kindeman? It's kinda Kinder. Metro Simulated 2, and then Ratyrinth. It's like Labyrinth, but rat instead of lab. Get it? It might make you think that it's more of a maze-like game. It's not. But news-wise, I think there were things I wanted to talk about. I don't remember any of them. Because, Monday. You got a case of the Mondays. This is a strong case of the Mondays. If I had a Garfield shirt, I'd wear it. If you want Garfield shirts, holy shit, does the Yeti have you covered. My God, do they love putting Garfield shirts in their daily offerings. There have probably been close to 20 different Garfield shirts at this point. It's ridiculous. Is Garfield relevant? Someone tell me. I'm asking you. Is Garfield relevant? I know there's the movie or whatever that's coming out at some point where little baby Garfield looks very cute. But, oh shit. Garfield is Garfield voiced by Chris Pratt? Oh God, no. I don't like that. Mario, who gives a shit? But Garfield has a very specific personality. Mario is just a shell of nothing. Garfield, no. Garfield should be Nick Offerman. If you want to take someone from Parks and Rec, take Nick Offerman. Don't take Chris Pratt. Anyway, let's start things off with Lunar Lander Beyond. And I'm going to go back to doing those descriptions. I'm going straight to the emails again. with the codes and all that jazz. About Lunar Lander Beyond. From storytelling masters Dreams Uncorporated, parentheses, Chris Tale, so I guess they made that game, comes an unexpected narrative adventure based on Lunar Lander, the trailblazing simulation game that shaped the genre as we know it today. In Lunar Lander Beyond, players take on the role of captain of the Pegasus Corporation, a spacefaring delivery company with a crew of colorful pilots and state-of-the-art landers. Guide your crew through taxing missions to deliver cargo, retrieve resources, and rescue stranded pilots as you navigate a mysterious universe of moons and planets. So, I don't have a lot of experience with Lunar Lander, the original arcade title, Atari title. But this is basically a game where it's very, I guess, physics-based. But you are controlling a ship in a less direct way, sort of like Asteroids, where you are controlling its rotation and then using your thruster to propel yourself forward. You have the ability, you unlock certain things as you progress and whatnot. But one of the first things you get is the ability to essentially stop your lander in place. So if you are propelling and you're going too fast, you're going to hit something, you can press this stopper button and it'll seemingly sort of eject steam or whatever, visually at least, and that'll halt your momentum, which is very key in navigating these tight places, these tight spaces. You also get a tractor beam and whatnot, and it's all, and all of this is then thrown into a campaign where you have to go on these missions to obtain credits to, I don't know if you use them for unlocking, but you can use them for healing your pilots, because one of the things that makes the game more interesting as you progress, and it's when you hit this point that the game becomes more interesting, because up until this point it's pretty dull. But there is a stress meter, and when you are playing through these levels, every time you hit something or anything of that nature, your stress will build up for the pilot you're using on that mission. And as they progress higher and higher, you will start hallucinating. If it gets too high, the mini-map that tells you where you need to go will become completely jarbled. You won't be able to see anything. And hallucinations will then start appearing in a more frequent way and in a way that they can actually harm your lander. So you have to keep that in check. And that makes navigating these spaces a lot more concerning and makes you think about what you're doing and not play as recklessly, which is a nice addition, because up until that point, you can just do whatever you fucking want without any consequence. The campaign setup is kind of interesting, cool, as a means to modernize this relatively simple classic game. But I played it for an hour or maybe two, did a close to 10 missions, and I never really got into it. I think it controls fine. Visually, it's all right. But I found the whole campaign thing to be a bit tiresome. There's a fair amount of narrative that you don't really have to engage with, but it's there. And I feel like since it is there, it should be doing more for me than it is. And it makes me long for, and maybe there was a Lunar Lander, what is the name of their other series where they do Recharge, the Recharge series. Maybe there was a Lunar Lander Recharged title and I'm just not remembering it. But I really like that series because even though some of them don't always hit for me, I like the way those modernize these old Atari games or arcade games or both, but keep that arcade feel, that arcade flavor, but just update the visuals, maybe add some elements of upgrading to the mechanics and throw in a bunch of challenges that ask you to play in a certain way. I like that way of dealing with these games as opposed to trying to make them into more of a quote-unquote real game. Not that I'm against doing it, it just, in this case, did not really work for me, sadly. But that is Lunar Lander Beyond. And maybe worth checking out. If you're a big fan of Lunar Lander, then it might be more interesting to you. But then we have Ark Survival. What is it? Ark Survival Ascended? Yeah, so this is, I don't need to include a description for this because this is just the redo of the first Ark game in Unreal Engine 5, which I don't know if they officially said this was the reason, but is believed or officially was to get them used to using Unreal Engine 5 in preparation for Ark 2 for the sequel. Which I don't know if that is called Ark 2. The Ark with Vin Diesel. But this is the Unreal Engine 5 version of original Ark. And I was excited about this because I was always very intrigued by Ark. I really wanted to get into it, but performance, optimization, all that on consoles at least was, on Xbox at least, was a fucking mess. And I was excited about this, assuming that by this time and utilizing this engine and all that, everything should be fine, right? The thing I remember most about Ark, especially when it launched on Xbox, was an incredible amount of screen tearing. There's no way that'll be in this version, right? Right? No. I can't believe how much screen tearing is in this game. I can't believe it is as poorly optimized and as poorly performing as it is, given that it is a remake, redo, whatever, of the first Ark in this. It just shows that they... I'm curious. I'd like to go back to the original, see if that runs smoothly now. And it's just that, you definitely needed to do this before Ark 2 so that you can try and figure out how to fucking make Unreal Engine 5 work, because you clearly do not know how to make it work, at least on console. This is a fucking mess. So I didn't really play much of it because the screen tearing is so bad that it'll give me a headache in minutes. I cannot stand screen tearing, and this screen tearing is just atrocious. So, at least on Xbox, I can safely say avoid Ark Survival Ascended at all costs in its current form. Maybe eventually it'll get to a good place. Hopefully it will. But right now it's just a fucking disaster. Sadly. Then Richman 11. Where are you? See, the email doesn't give you anything. We'll go to this page. I'm sweating. Richman 11. The long-running Richman series arrives with its most advanced and addictive entry yet, Richman 11. In this high-stakes 3D board game of investments and property control, players can choose from a wide variety of fancy and energetic characters to represent them, set the number of players, and enter a hilariously immersive game world all about getting rich and staying on top. From classic maps paying homage to the series' 1989 origins to brawl boards with missiles and bombs, there are many ways to keep the multiplayer mayhem fresh and exciting no matter how many times you play solo or against friends and family. Roll the dice to move across the board, draw cards, buy empty land, build houses or chain stores, level up buildings to collect higher rent, make deposits when passing banks, and punish the competition on your path to financial victory. If that was a lot to take in, basically it's Monopoly, but more complicated. And that's... There is a wide selection of characters, which was surprising. There's probably 15 to 20 characters, and that was nice. I think visually it's very bright and colorful, and now my dad is calling me, so let us cut here. And scene. We are back. I was talking about Richman 11. I know that. I don't know where I left in that whole thing. But it's basically Monopoly, but more complicated. And the tutorial in the game is terrible. I think the way it differentiates between normal boards and the battle boards that include those missiles and all that they talk about is just the board. It's not a different mode. You don't go into normal mode or battle mode, because I jumped into a match without doing the tutorial. Didn't really know what I was doing, and then I played the tutorial, and the tutorial doesn't tell you anything. It just says that he's calling back. And scene number 2. Hopefully he doesn't call back. Everything's fine. He just is expecting to have to stay there one more day, assuming he can come home tomorrow. But nothing bad or anything. Just, he needs some stuff. So I'm gonna go take some stuff over to him later. And then he wanted to call me back because he has a thing they're doing later that might take a little while, so he might not be in the room. If he's not there, put the stuff here. Don't have to wait for him if it's going to be too long. Richman 11. At least we're not talking about a game, spoilers, that I really, really like, so we're not breaking up that conversation. But I was talking about there's no normal mode, blah, blah, blah. You just pick the thing, and I played the tutorial, and the tutorial was awful. The tutorial just told me what I already could gather from playing the game by itself, which is the goal of the game is to make the most money and make everyone else go bankrupt, because this is just Monopoly. And how you do that, you get properties, and then you get your fucking opponents to land on your properties and pay you. And then when they've got no more money, they can't play anymore, and you win. Thank you. What about there's all these other systems and elaborations on the Monopoly formula that it does not tell you a fucking thing about. And I don't think there's anything in the game like a glossary or an index of what this is, what that is, this action, that action, so on and so forth. So in my playing of it, the one game, it was just a fucking mess. I won. I destroyed every other player. There's no difficulty. But I destroyed them. But it wasn't fun, and it was incredibly... It's not as long as a game of Monopoly. I probably could have made it longer, maybe, because you can set up some of the details that basically make it seem like how long the game will last when you first start up, but nothing super crazy. But the one thing that really stood out, and there's an aspect of the game where you are collecting cards that you can use to help you or inhibit other players. So you can, if you have barely any money and there are other players in your vicinity, you can play this card that will split everyone's money equally amongst the people in this aura. That's neat. You have a thing that can be sent ahead of you on the board if there are things that other players have placed as obstacles to destroy them, so you won't have to inhibit the wrath of those various objects and whatnot. So there are some cool ideas here, but it's very cumbersome and could be better handled and should 100% at the very least be better explained, all the different things that and how everything works. But it's also just kind of fucked in the way things work. Best illustrated by one of these certain actions that happened after another player when I was playing the game. They drew a card or landed on a certain spot that initiated an upgrading of every property on the board. Every property on the board, whether they owned it, another player owned it, or it was owned by no one. And this board had 50 or 60 properties, so it just went one by one by one by one 60 fucking times and took 5 minutes to do this. I couldn't skip it. So the game is poorly designed. It's poorly explained. And unless you have experience with the Richman series, this is not a great jumping on point. I don't know if other games better explain themselves or what. It is something that through play you'll learn it, of course. But is it worth it? That's up to you to say. If you really love Monopoly, sure. But I've also seen, if you're a big Richman fan, I've seen a lot of complaints that this is just basically Richman 10. There's not much they've changed or added. So if you are a big Richman fan, probably not worth the upgrade. And if you're not familiar with this series, unless you really like Monopoly, probably not worth checking out. But that is Richman 11. Next, we have the Kindeman Remedy. Oh, I wanted to like this so much. The Kindeman Remedy. The most blasphemous, diabolical, and insane management game ever created. Aided by a lascivious? There's a word that have I ever heard this word? A person, manner, or gesture, feeling or revealing an overt and often offensive sexual desire. Lascivious. Yeah, I've heard this. I don't think I've ever seen it I've heard it. I don't think I've ever seen it. Aided by a lascivious nun in a grim prison, rig executions, conduct horrid experiments, and do the unspeakable to cook up your cure-all, the Kindeman Remedy. Do not be afraid. This time, you're the monster. Ooh. This is a game where you play a maniacal, radical doctor who will go by any means to find scientific, medical advancements, whatever, and takes on the role of a prison doctor, poisoning prisoners in order to have bodies to turn into experimental fluid shit. You can torture certain prisoners who you give some shit to make them fake their execution so it seems like they're dead, but they're not really dead, and then you take them and then you get to test them and do things like rip out their stomach, see how long they'll survive without their stomach. And there's so much story, and it sounds like maybe it could be interesting, but it's incredibly tedious and boring, and in no way gives you, at least the 2 hours I've played roughly, any freedom to try anything yourself. It just is, hey, you switch between these two characters. Okay, I'm the doctor. I'm going to grab this component and this component. I'm going to mix them in my table. Then when it's done, I'm going to send it up to the nurse, and I'm going to have her put them in the places where the prisoners take them. Maybe I'll poison one. Maybe I'll poison both. Maybe I'll poison none. And then we just repeat this process over and over and over again. And they're constantly adding to the narrative of it all. And everything's so slow and so repetitive and not fun, not challenging, not in any way making me think about any of my actions. I'm not thinking about, well, why should I poison this prisoner? Or there's no personality to the game. The story is dumb. The visuals are whatever. It's not feeding that desire for incredible gore and all that, if that's something that would maybe interest you. It's just, I really want to like it, and its only saving grace is that I thought, this is probably like a $20 game or something. It's only $8. So if it conceptually sounds like it might be interesting to you, maybe there's something there. I feel like there's a lot of time to be spent in it, and maybe eventually it'll open up, but there isn't a free mode or anything like that. There's just start a new game or continue. So and you can skip all the story stuff. You can skip these cutscenes and these bits of dialogue if you want. But it seems weird that there's not a version that just strips all that out, a free mode that allows you to And maybe that'll unlock after you beat the game once. Fingers crossed that would exist. But I would like that kind of thing to just be there right from the beginning. Because I don't feel any sense of freedom that allows me to really... I'm just following what it wants me to do. And I'm just doing it. And it's not fun to do. It's super boring. Super dull. And it's currently not challenging where I have to really... I'm struggling to do all this stuff. It also does not feel great with a gamepad because it is you controlling an on-screen cursor and using the D-pad to more quickly get between these different rooms, and you're looking at this space sort of like a Fallout Shelter or games like that, where you're going from room to room, and then you press on different parts of the room to interact with those things. So the pill dispenser, you click on that, then the component dispenser, you click on that, then you click on the combine table, whatever, then you click on other things, and you have your little queue so you can line up 3 actions at a time. The currency of the game is based on how many prisoners you heal versus poison and all that. So the quote unquote better a doctor you are, the more reputation points you'll get that you can use to upgrade your various facilities so that you'll have more stations to do more things. So you're not just waiting around while certain things are cooking and all that. But it's just so fucking boring and dull. And I really, really want to like it. I kept going back to it thinking maybe this time things will open up. And that never really happened. That is the Kindeman Remedy. Then we have Metro Simulator 2. Don't really need to go into this all that much. Guess what it is? It's a simulator where you play a metro driver, aka subway driver. And it's just an absolute mess to try and deal with this thing with a gamepad. And it is ugly. It does not do a good job of teaching you how everything works. And the tutorial is weirdly structured and has you doing things when you don't really need to do them just because it wants you to learn how this thing works now, but then it screws up other things. It's just a bit of a mess. Not really worth messing around with, because I'm pretty sure there are better options out there that look nicer, play better. This is one of the weakest outings from this particular studio that does typically a lot of janky simulators, but sometimes there are ones that have more charm to it. This is down there with like the aquarium thing that they did of being just no good. And then Ratyrinth is a side-scrolling platformer that I thought could be a nice simple time, like a lot of recent-ish East Asia Soft platformers, but this one I found to be pretty frustrating in not a pleasant way, where while I got through 15 or 20 levels pretty relatively easily, there were a lot of instances where it just, level design wise, felt like it did not want me to ever get into a flow state. So the way I was navigating these levels, I never felt like I could turn my brain off, which may sound like a weird thing that you'd want. It never really, I never gelled with it. We never became simpatico. We never combined to become Ultron or whatever the fuck I want to say here. It just always felt like these things were a little bit too tight, or they put this thing here in a way that made it annoying and impeded me from really just continuing. I just never clicked with it, despite getting through it. It never felt good. It never felt particularly good. That is it in terms of what I've been playing. I'll better start. I thought all the emails were gonna have the things. We're Monday, all right. Monday phone calls. This is an active state of what the hell's going on. But that is it. That is all. That will do it for this here episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Once again, I am Mark Krishnez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you enjoy this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can support me and my nonsense over at patreon.com/PXS, where you can get not early access to Attack the Backlog. I'm not going to do those early access audio only versions anymore. I've only done them twice, but I don't think that's all that interesting or desirable for people. But I will continue, and maybe even more frequently, just doing random drops. The most recent one, 40 plus minutes about Indiana Jones, the series, versus The Mummy, the series, starring Brendan Fraser. Who comes out on top? Is there also some Terminator 2 talk in there, and True Lies, and other random crap? Maybe. Do I have really nice things to say about Crystal Skull? You'll have to become a patron to find out. A patron of the Patreon. But stuff like that, as well as access to the Discord channel with all the cool people. That's where all the cool people are. The cool people. And the monthly Q&A, which is just around the corner. Going to be recorded this Sunday. So if you join the Patreon now, you can get a whole bunch of questions in, because there's no limit on questions. So maybe you should do that. But if not, that's cool too. That's fine. If you don't want to do that, you can like, subscribe, all that crap and whatnot. That's what it is. In addition to the Patreon, you can also find links to the site, the Discord, the YouTube, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. But that is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have both a wonderful rest of your day, a lovely rest of your week, and a wonderful weekend. But for now, adios, arrivederci, bye!
It's go time. Go, Daddy.